Hello everybody, I'm Eternal Flame here, and today we have a lot to talk about because the most recent chapter of JJK came out, and there are a few things that are very important to talk about, but the most important thing to talk about is Yuji's Black Flash, and more importantly, the narration statement that his full potential has awakened, and what I think the result of that is going to be. And most of all, how this is going to lead into Yuji mastering the Black Flash, and why I think Yuji is going to master the Black Flash without a doubt. However, before we get into this video, be sure to like and subscribe like anime content like this, and let's get into this. This theory is actually going to be working on two of the theories that I have released in the past. Those two theories being the key to Yuji's awakening and why Yuji is going to master Black Flash, because I actually think both of those theories are going to be very important to each other and are going to link back to each other for why Yuji will master the Black Flash and why Yuji might be the only one or one of the only few people that is able to master the Black Flash. Now, if you do want to watch either of these theories, they will be available to watch in the iCard up above. However, I'm going to give a very quick rundown on both of those theories and the important parts of this theory for today's theory. The first theory I'm going to give a basic summary of is the key to Yuji Itadori's awakening, which is mainly coming from the fact that Sukuna in one of the chapters in the past had compared Maki to Yuji, saying that Maki had managed to shave away all her cursed energy unlike Yuji, basically calling Yuji the halfway point between someone like himself, which is the peak of sorcery, and someone like Maki, who is the peak of physical body. Meanwhile, in the Yuji will master the Black Flash theory, the reason why I think that it was possible that Yuji would end up mastering the Black Flash is because of how much skill that he ended up showing with the Black Flash, and that being by far and away his most built-up power-up up to this point. And finally, the narrator line of Yuji against Mahito, where the narrator said that no one is able to use the Black Flash at will, however, Yuji is doing so amazing he will make you think he is using the Black Flash at will. However, I was a little bit wrong in my Black Flash theory, mainly because at that current point in time, I was under the conception that the only way to master the Black Flash would be having godly amounts of cursed energy control, because back then all we knew about the Black Flash was in order to activate it, it needs to be within a millionth of a second, and cursed energy needs to be applied within a millionth of a second. However, Gojo just straight up states that there are other factors involved when it comes to whether someone should land a Black Flash or not. As Gojo himself says, it's not just the timing of the hit. Depending on the blend, it's a toss-up. And it's not like anyone can even control the third type, well, anyone except for me, talking about cursed energy types and how people reinforce their hands when they're doing hand-to-hand combat. With him further stating that the blend needs to be changed depending on the environment, your physical conditions, or the opponent's cursed energy. And then finally, he even thinks that it could be possible that temperature and humidity could potentially be involved as well, due to Black Flash being a spatial phenomena. Now, these are all things that are outside of cursed energy itself's control, and it's also very hard for a sorcerer itself to be able to actually tell these things from the world. However, in my opinion, this description is actually very similar to another person's powers that we know is able to view the world like this, that is able to view things like the airwaves down to that type of level, where it would be necessary in order to be able to do precise Black Flash control, that being Heavenly Restriction users themselves. As Heavenly Restriction users in comparison to sorcerers are a lot more one with the world. This was especially shown off during Maki's battle with Naoya, where Maki was using the airwaves in order to sense Naoya's location repeatedly, basically giving her a form of precognition with her abilities. So basically what I'm trying to get at is, it actually might not be luck-based for the Black Flash based on these extra conditions, it's just impossible for a sorcerer to be able to tell these things. However, a Heavenly Restriction user, or at least one like Toji and Maki, have the opposite issue, where they just aren't able to use cursed energy, so they're not able to make advantage of the fact that they are able to completely adjust themselves to those parts of the world that might get in the way of the Black Flash. So while sorcerers are able to time themselves out well with their cursed energy, be able to control their cursed energy so they don't mess up with landing a Black Flash, and be able to sense when someone else's cursed energy is active so they can time out when to actually land the hit perfectly, the Heavenly Restriction side of things are able to account for those other mistakes and other things that might get in the way and how to adjust for them. One side, being the sorcery side, is forced to account for several of those possibilities while not having the option of being able to land it at will, because there is just so much they can't account for because they can't see the world like Heavenly Restriction users do. Meanwhile, Heavenly Restriction users are able to see the world like that, however they don't have the cursed energy necessary in order to actually use the Black Flash, not allowing them to be like other sorcerers. Basically, what I am trying to say is this: in order for one to use the Black Flash at will, based on at least how Gojo describes it and how Gojo describes what gets in the way of the Black Flash and how to account for the Black Flash, is that the only way to account for it is to have the abilities of Heavenly Restriction user while still having cursed energy. as the abilities of the Heavenly Restriction user will be able to allow you to account for all of the other situations in order for you to constantly adjust yourself in order to land a Black Flash. Because the issue with the Black Flash is it's always a constantly evolving and constantly changing thing. There is not one finite answer in order to land the Black Flash, and for one to land the Black Flash, one must be able to alter themselves in order to perfectly align themselves with the conditions no matter what. Of course, yes, there are still going to be situations where one cannot land the Black Flash because there are always going to be something in the way, but if you have the powers of a Heavenly Restriction user, you are able to time out your body and utilize your curse energy and time it out with the world itself in order to make sure you do land a Black Flash. Now, some of you guys might be wondering, how does this all lead back to Yuji? Why is Yuji the person who is able to fulfill both of those conditions? Well, remember something I talked about earlier and why the reason that Yuji was created the way that he was created. Because Yuji was made to be the creation and result of a Heavenly Restriction user combined with sorcery, as Sukuna himself calls out that Yuji is the in-between point basically. He congratulates Maki for going the full way, and specifically calls out Yuji and compares Yuji to Maki. However, I believe that outlook on the Black Flash is completely wrong, for I don't think it's possible for a sorcerer at all to master the Black Flash. Similar to what the narrator themselves says, no sorcerer can use the Black Flash at will. However, something that transcends sorcery, something that has both the aspects of the body and sorcery itself, should actually have the potential to be able to master it, should be able to combine both aspects of Heavenly Restriction and Heavenly Restriction users' ability to account for everything that's happening in the world, as well as the curse energy control needed from sorcerers in order to allow themselves to perfectly land a Black Flash with each hit. In order for one to fully be able to land the Black Flash at will, one must be able to take both aspects of sorcery and the world and be able to transcend them and push them to their absolute limit, fully unlocking their potential, like Yuji has just done with this Black Flash. And that is the reason that I actually believe Yuji was created itself. I believe the reason that Kenjaku had made Yuji was to see if it could be possible through combining these two aspects to be able to create someone who could land the Black Flash at will. Now, I will say this, I don't think Yuji has access to the same level of the sensory and area sensory as Maki does. However, I do think Yuji is going to end up having enough of a level of it to allow him to be able to hone in on being able to sense conditions in the world and when perfectly to use the Black Flash, basically allowing him to use the Black Flash at will on hand with his own curse energy manipulation. Or at least give him a massively higher success rate in actually using the Black Flash in comparison to others, because Yuji would be able to constantly account for what could get in the way of him being able to land the Black Flash, what could naturally be getting in the way that goes beyond just simply curse energy based punches. Now, some of you guys might be thinking this, it's only one power or the other. You can't have some aspects of a Heavenly Restriction while still having access to curse energy. However, we know that's not the case for two separate reasons. Number one, Sukuna ends up specifically comparing Maki to Yuji, congratulating Maki for going the full way, like I talked about beforehand. But number two, and this is the much more important one, Sukuna just straight up shows it is possible to have some Heavenly Restriction powers even though he doesn't have access to all of them. The reason why I say this is because Sukuna is able to utilize the air hop in a very similar way to Maki does, and now it's been directly called out by Cho so that Sukuna has access to that same air hop. Which is why I also think that Yuji is going to end up getting the sensory ability that Heavenly Restriction users have access to. The ability to sense disturbances in the air, the ability to read the air, the ability to sense heat, and ability to sense small particles that Maki has displayed in the past, but not getting the air hop ability. And this is the method that I actually believe that Yuji is going to end up being able to use the Black Flash at will from. It also kind of works in a narrative sense because it still makes Yuji both similar to Sukuna while also being the opposite of Sukuna because he gets the other half of the Heavenly Restriction powers. Where Sukuna has access to the air hop ability as he is displayed against Maki, Yuji has access to the sensory ability, and that is something I think he is about to awaken after landing this Black Flash, as it is stated by the narrator themselves that Yuji's potential has awakened. Now, I do think Yuji's going to awaken other things, which is what's going to be an entirely different video, but I do think that this is going to be part of it, and a pretty massive part of it too, in order to allow Yuji to land the Black Flash at will. Now, while I do think that this is the method of how the Black Flash is going to be mastered, I'm now going to take a little bit of time to actually explain why I think that's going to be what the next narrative step is for Yuji's power-up, and why I think Yuji is going to be the only one to master the Black Flash, and what the main narrative effects of it will be. Now, some of you guys might be thinking this. After this chapter, Gege is just using Gojo as a way to establish and further hone on the fact that it is impossible to master the Black Flash. After all, Gege had completely used Gojo to debunk the notion that it just required good curse energy control to be able to master the Black Flash, and godlike curse energy control that went beyond Gojo's level of curse energy control that I thought was possible, adding even more conditions into it to make it even more luck-based. However, in my opinion, I actually just see this as a way for Gege to establish how much more impressive it's going to be if a character does end up mastering the Black Flash. That's what I believe the purpose of this is, of establishing how difficult it would be to master it, and the fact that there is no actual answer to it, and that the answer requires ever-changing evolution. After all, there is no correct answer on how to use the Black Flash at will, because every single circumstance a Black Flash can be used has to be different. However, if one is able to constantly change and adapt with the times and adapt with the circumstances circumstances themselves, they would be able to master the Black Flash itself, being able to control each and every one of those aspects of life, or being able to just move along with each and every one of those aspects of life, like the wind itself. Which is why I don't think that Yuji is actually going to master the Black Flash, but I think he's going to get extremely close to mastering the Black Flash to be able to adapt to any of the other circumstances, to be able to land another Black Flash repeatedly. Furthermore, it would also help to feed into the narrative that has been built up to this point, that each of Gojo's main students will end up surpassing Gojo in a certain aspect, with Yuta Akotsu surpassing Gojo in his amount of curse energy as well as domain skill, considering Yuta is able to specifically target who gets hit by the sure hit, something that Gojo is not capable of doing, and the only other person we've ever seen actually be capable of doing something like this are Dagon and Sukuna in both of their battles respectively. Meanwhile, Hikari has greater RCT than Gojo by a landslide, as stated by Urame. So Yuji surpassing Gojo in the aspect of Black Flash mastery, being able to master things that Gojo thought was completely impossible, makes a lot of sense for him in my opinion. And while I do think that the method that I provided in this video is one possible way of how Yuji can end up doing it, there might actually be other ways, and Gege might end up going a very different path than how I've set up in this video. But I do think that it's going to be very, very likely that Yuji is going to end up mastering the Black Flash, mainly because mastering the Black Flash is also the main power-up that has been set up for Yuji for a long while. After all, when Yuji had first used the Black Flash, he tied Nanami's record. The person who held the record for using the most consecutive amount of Black Flashes, he had surpassed the amount of Black Flashes that Gojo had used in total, and more importantly, he was able to make Mahito believe and Sukuna have a similar feeling that Yuji was able to use the Black Flash at will because of how amazing he was doing in that fight. So it's only the natural step of progression that Yuji ends up mastering the Black Flash and being able to use it at will. Furthermore, the Black Flash had been the main power that Yuji had access to for a long while, being notoriously incredibly good at it, so I do think that that's what the most built-up power-up is for Yuji, and the only thing that might be a little bit more built-up for Yuji is getting Sukuna's Curse Technique, but even then, I don't actually think that's more built-up, considering getting Sukuna's Curse Technique literally only has one mention and the potential of another panel leading into it, which is for another day and another video to discuss, which is going to be on the What Yuji Fully Awakening video might actually be. Meanwhile, Yuji mastering the Black Flash has been the narrative progression across the entire series in my opinion. Like, even in the Culling games in my opinion, this has actually been a huge thing about why the narrative has been building up slowly and surely to Yuji mastering the Black Flash and being able to use it at will, because the reason why Yuji never used it in the Culling game was because each of his opponents in the Culling games ended up preventing him from using it in a certain way, with his first two opponents being too weak for him to use it on, the second one ending up taking away his curse energy being Higuruma, and finally when he was against Sukuna he was far too angry to be able to focus and get in the zone to be able to use it. But now I think that Yuji has dealt with those emotions thanks to Higuruma's help and just basically everything that has happened so far and has been focused and being free of Sukuna. That's how I think Yuji is going to end up mastering the Black Flash. The reason why I'm bringing all of this up is because of the fact that I know there are a few people who genuinely don't think there was any build-up at all for Yuji mastering the Black Flash, and that that's not going to be the power-up he's going to get, but I really want to talk about how I think that the entire Black Flash and Yuji mastering the Black Flash has been a really important part of Yuji's journey to power. Even the Divergent Fist is kind of similar to the Black Flash, because a lot of people do describe the Divergent Fist as being something similar to the Black Flash, the Divergent Fist being something that lags behind massively in terms of curse energy from a delayed hit. Meanwhile, the Black Flash is something you need to time precisely for when your curse energy hits, the two of them being near opposites but also being incredibly similar. So some people have theorized the Divergent Fist is the key to him mastering the Black Flash, which I could see being something very, very possible as well. But yeah, for those reasons, I do believe that Yuji is going to end up mastering the Black Flash, or being able to heavily increase his chances in landing the Black Flash down to the point where it will be considered near mastery of it, and he will be able to slowly increase in power and slowly increase his level through mastering the Black Flash further and further. However, that's just my opinion on how I think Yuji is going to end up mastering the Black Flash, and I want to hear what you guys think in the comment section down below. And I'm going to see y'all later. Peace out. Hope y'all have a good day.